Okay, we're going to begin our meeting. This will be recorded. There is public access through the Zoom link. WCAT cannot do it at this point, so we will be providing them with the recording to play at a later date and time. Good evening and welcome to the Winthrop School Committee meeting of Monday, January 4th, 2021. This meeting is being held by way of a Zoom telephone conference. Ms. Hames, could you please call the roll for the record?
Yes, Miss Barry. Here. Mr. Boncory.
Here.
Mr. Capabianco.
Here.
Mr. Matucci.
Here.
Miss Swope. Miss Swope. Miss Powell.
Present.
Mr. Perrin.
Yes.
Here. Sorry,
That's okay.
I was muted.
Okay. This meeting is currently being recorded and is not being televised live at this point. There is a WCAT issue with Zoom. However, again, the meeting itself in its entirety will be sent over in a recorded format for them to broadcast at a later date. But the other Zoom participants from the public still have access to call in for public comment. Okay. Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Swope, will you lead us to the Pledge of Allegiance this evening? President Boncory, if you could just present the flag. I pledge
allegiance
To the flag
of the
United States of America,
to the
and
republic
to the republic
for which it
for
stands,
which it stands,
one
nation,
under
God, indivisible,
with liberty
liberty,
and
and
justice
justice
for all.
If everyone could remain standing just for a moment of silence for Adelaide Gallo, who died in June of 2013 after 21 years of service as an ESP, for a moment of silence. Thank you. Ms. Hames, do we have any public comment at this point?
Do. We have Mr. Sacco.
Good evening, Mr. Sacco. You're on mute, sir.
Hope you guys had a great holiday season. Just noticed on the agenda of the new business that there's going to be some discussion about meeting in person again. And I'm here to say that if you know, we're going to ask teachers and faculty and administration to be back in school, then you guys should be having meetings in person also. So I'll look forward to that discussion and hope that you will do the right thing and vote affirmatively.
Thank you, Mr. Sacco. Any further public comment?
Yes, we have Tyson Riegler.
Good evening, Tyson.
Hey, good evening. Thank you for taking my comment. My name is Tyson Greger. I'm a Winthrop resident, and I have two children in the Winthrop public school systems. I have a kindergartner and a third grader. I'm excited about the steps that have been taken. You know, obviously this week is a big week in terms of the transition, so I'll be excited to see how things are going to play out. The reason for my public comment tonight is I wanted to ask, you know, either in response to this or maybe Mrs. Howard as part of your public comment, or, you know, as part of your discussion, if you guys could also provide an update on, you know, the status of the kindergartners. Right now, the kindergarten program, I think as most of you are aware, the kindergartners are currently going to school for roughly about 3 hours a day. You know, I'm not really quite sure of all the educational requirements, but it seems to me from what I could find out that my guess is that is the minimum requirement. So as a parent, you know, I guess it bothers me a bit that we're doing the absolute minimum for our kindergartners. You know, I know that the decision was originally made in response to the survey results that were sent out a number of months back. And I know both parents and teachers said that students, you know, there was concern that students were getting too much screen time. And I have to admit, I was one of those parents when I answered that question. I too said that I thought, my kindergartner was getting too much screen time. And, candidly, that was because I wanted to see them try to get back to, to school. So had I known that the outcome would have been that the number of hours that the kindergartners were going to go to school was going to be reduced, I think I would have answered the question a little bit differently. So I think, in closing tonight, I don't know how this all works. This is my first time commenting here publicly, but I'd like to ask somebody from the school committee, to the extent possible, to request that, a new survey be sent out sometime in the next week or two to solicit updated input from the kindergarten parents with respect to, the amount of screen time and the way it's working for the kindergartners. Because I'd like to see a solution where they're getting back to school, on much more of what I'd call a normal schedule, like the rest of our students. And then, I guess lastly, just in closing, I wanted to say, like many parents, I've been forced to pay closer attention to these meetings, just so I know what's going on. And, they've been very informative. I've learned a lot. And what I just wanted to say, I noticed a couple of weeks back, what I'd like to see is, as part of this discussion, to the extent possible, is, I guess more input coming from what other schools and other communities are doing as outcomes. I know, Mr. Capobianco, I know you had, made some comments and asked some questions. You had given reference to a couple of other school systems in terms of what they were doing. And it seemed like there were some outcomes that were working. And I haven't really seen much discussion, as an observer and a listener in on these calls about what other schools are doing. And clearly many of them are ahead of us in this curve. And so I think that there could be some really great learnings. That's all I had for tonight. So thank you very much for taking my comment.
Thank you, Tyson. We appreciate your call in. Any more comments, Patty?
Yes, we have Alex Mail.
Oh, my name is actually Donna Mail. I'm using my husband's account. First off, I'd like to thank everyone and all the teachers for everything that they're doing, as it is much appreciated coming from a family of teachers. That being said, I'd like to remind you that out of 56,851 new cases in Massachusetts within the last 2 weeks of December, 9,814 were that of children under the age of 18. That roughly equates to just under 18% of all new cases. This is the second highest demographic behind those aged 20 to 30 years old. Just because the fatality is lower does not mean that this does not affect our children, and the numbers clearly show that our children are at risk. I ask that you please reconsider opening our school systems, as it is not safe, and we still do not know the impacts of this virus, nor the impact from Christmas or any New Year's Eve parties. Secondly, when asked in late October about a return to hybrid, these models were low, and our town was considered yellow. Our parents were under the impression that if numbers spiked and our town was considered to be red again, the hybrid school system would be moved to a remote model. We're currently well into the red model with an anticipation to stay there or beyond. And us parents should be given the ability to move our children back to a remote model. And I ask that the committee address this issue tonight. Once again, thank you for your time. And I strongly encourage other parents in attendance to click the raise hand button and have their voices be heard as well.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment.
Next,
Any
we
further public
have,
comment?
Jennifer Jones.
I just want to agree with what the speaker just said before me. We have 51 new cases as of January 1st in this town. The numbers are getting higher and higher. We don't even know what the results will be from the holidays yet. And the idea of coming back now just seems irresponsible. And with adding on to what she said, I chose hybrid as well. I'm not sending my kids to hybrid. I'm sending them remote because I think that this committee is making decisions that are irresponsible. If I knew that that was going to happen, I would have chose remote. I thought that this committee would realize that the data and make these decisions based on the data and realize that the red zone would not be a time to send the kids back. And that's all I'd like to say.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Any further public comment, Patty?
No.
Okay, closing out public comment. We're going to move on
Oh,
to,
we have one more. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I apologize. Marissa Ferrara.
Ms. Marissa.
Hi, thank you. Happy New Year to the school committee and to the administration.
You as well.
Just wanted to say 3 of my children started back in hybrid today, joyfully and gladfully. And I just wanted to thank the school committee, the administration, the teachers, and all of the support staff for everything that they have done over the past several months to get us to this point. And I just wanted to state a reminder, because I think that some people may be a little confused. The DESE expectation for red communities is hybrid. So I'm really glad that the school committee and the administration moved forward with that recommendation and are doing their best to make sure that our kids are back to in-person learning. Thank you all.
Thank you, Marissa. Thank you for your comment. Ms. Hames, do we have any further public comment?
Yes, we do. Diana Vanes.
Hi, everyone. This is Diana. Just a couple of things. I think that you know, as some folks have said, people chose hybrid because they were worried about losing their teacher, which understandably so, based on what people experienced in March, which was not fun. I think that everyone understands the need to plan, and certainly understands the need to have enough staff to school the teacher, the students that are learning from home, and plan ahead of time. And that can't be done without surveying and taking numbers and getting an understanding from the staff as to what is possible. And I think in this situation, it's probably a continual polling. You know, what's the situation? Do we have any additional means to support additional staff for remote students based on the situation on the ground? You know, what has changed since last month? And I want to say that, but I also have to say that I think that transparency is a really important thing to happen now. So, you know, it is what it is. We've started today. Students are hybrid. I think parents have told their children what they need, you know, what they need to tell them. And I think that it is exciting for some kids, most kids, all kids, probably, to see their friends and see their teachers and be back in school, which is what they wanted for probably like a year. But at the end of the day, I think the best thing that we can do for this community is to just empower our parents, and, you know, we're all adults, with the information that's at hand. So if we have new cases, you know, here's the situation. Parents, how are you feeling? And I realize that's a logistical nightmare, but I think it's absolutely called for in this situation. And I think everyone would appreciate it. And having that ability just to make decisions, even if we can't pivot necessarily with staffing, but if the situation is such that, you know, it's a situation where a parent gets the information that makes them change their mind because it's just too much to bear, I think it's worth it when it comes to health and safety. And that's all.
Thank you. Appreciate your comment. Patty, any additional public comment?
No.
Okay, I'm going to close out public comment and move on to the next portion of our meeting, which is general information and recommendations. We have no delegates or visitors. I'm going to move on to the minutes of December 21st, 2020. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of December 21st, 2020?
Motion.
Motion by Ms. Powell,
Second.
second by Mr. Martucci. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none. Patty, can I have a roll call vote for the record?
Yes, Ms. Barry? Mr. Boncory?
Yes.
Mr. Capabianco?
Yes.
Mr. Matucci?
Yes.
Ms. Swope? Ms. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Perrin?
Yes. Okay, moving on to financial and business procedures. We're going to be dealing with warrant SVW 21-11, the amount of $59,647.76. Can I have a motion for that warrant, please?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Matucci, seconded by Ms. Swope.
Second.
Any discussion on the warrant? Hearing none. Patty, can we get a roll call vote for the record, please?
Yes, Miss Barry,
Yes.
Mr. Boncory,
Yes.
Mr. Capabianco,
Yes.
Mr. Matucci,
Yes.
Ms. Swope,
Yes.
Ms. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Perrin.
Yes. Okay, moving on to payroll warrant SPW 21-12 in the amount of $730,032.89. I'll entertain a motion for that amount, for that warrant.
Motion.
Motion by Ms. Swope. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Second by Ms. Barry. Any discussion on the payroll warrant? Hearing none. Patty, can I please get a roll call vote for the record?
Miss Barry,
Yes.
Mr. Boncory,
Abstain.
Mr. Capabianco,
Yes.
Mr. Matucci,
Abstain.
Ms. Swope,
Yes.
Ms. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Perrin.
Abstain. Okay, there are no budget transfers this evening. However, we do have a vote to accept a $10,000 scholarship in the memory of the Gaffney family. We'll need a vote to accept that. Can I have a motion to accept the $10,000 donation in memory of the Gaffney family?
Motion to accept.
Motion by Mr. Matucci, seconded by Mr. Capabianco. Any discussion on the motion? The only discussion I have is I just want to thank the Gaffney family for a generous donation towards a scholarship fund in their name. Patty, can we get a roll call vote, please, on the record?
Barry,
Yes.
Mr. Boncory,
Yes.
Mr. Capabianco,
Yes.
Mr. Matucci,
Yes.
Ms. Swope,
Yes, and thank you.
Ms. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Perrin.
Yes. Buildings and grounds, again, none. Moving on to general functions. There are no committee reports this evening, from my understanding. We have a superintendent's report. Superintendent Howard, do you have a report for us this?
Thank you. Our last meeting was right before the Christmas break, and we had covered quite a bit of information. Of course, quite a bit has continued to happen as we anticipated the opening of school today. I have to say it was probably the most nerve-wracking 3 days that I've had since returning to Winthrop to the role of superintendent, for all the same reasons that I believe our parents and families and staff members were anxious over the weekend. And that's, the unknown. What are we coming back to? How different is it going to look? I think the principals did a tremendous job in terms of outreach to parents and outreach to students, providing them with a picture of what the school building was going to look like, providing parents with information about how things were going to be different. But until you actually step through the doors of the school at 7:15 in the morning as a teacher or a superintendent or a secretary or custodian, whomever it may be, who works within that building, till you step in that building and the students start to arrive, those feelings go up and down, the emotions, the anxiety, the excitement, the anticipation. I had the luxury of starting off my day at the high school and the middle school, seeing our students come in, and it was like we had all ninth graders at the high school. So first day of school again, coming into a new building, even with some of our upperclassmen, you could see the anxiety. What's interesting about kids is, in my opinion, they're just way better than adults in a case like this. And as our students came into the school, they had their masks on, they knew the rules. It's as if they watched the tapes or the videos that some of our students produced. Jenna and Marador did a great job with a safety and understanding the safety protocols at the high school video, and all of our principals doing those same videos for other grade levels. It's as if the kids watched them and sort of studied them. And as I walked through the hallways of the middle school, watching kids understand what 6 feet of distance really means, for all of those who thought kids weren't paying attention, I can tell you they have been. They were walking through the hallways at all grade levels at the middle school, really separate from each other, and listening to the teachers and following directions, and were relatively quiet. As we all know, there's a honeymoon, like the first couple of days of school in a typical year, in which we will work with our students to continue to remind them. Heading over to the Cumming School and to the Gorman Fort Bank School, and seeing the majority of our littles having their masks on, great masks, by the way. You know, parents did some phenomenal shopping on Amazon, I'm sure. We had cat faces, we had people faces, we had crayons, we had Winthrop Vikings masks, and it sparked a lot of teacher discussion about how they looked and how cool it was, and that's a nice mask, and gee, you're doing a great job. Lots of positive reinforcement to our students, and lots of conversation about eyebrows, which is a very interesting topic, whether you are a little kid or whether you are a 21-year-old daughter of mine. Eyebrows are extremely important to be on fleek when you're older, but when you're a little kid, it's important because it allows us to recognize what's going on underneath that mask. And so I heard a lot of giggles and a lot of conversation with staff members just saying, hey, I know you're smiling under that mask because I can see it in your eyes. I know you're excited because I saw your eyebrows move. So lots of different, really different conversations in the hallways. The reports back from the administration and the teachers, you know, were all positive, that it was a great day, that they were excited for the kids to be there. It was an anxious day. People are nervous. You know, things that we have never done before, spending a tremendous amount of time reminding people to keep a mask above their nose. But our students did it. We did it with the support, just for a quick staff updating. We've hired classroom and hallway/bathroom monitors at all of our levels. Depending on the day, it depends where those people will be stationed. As most people are aware, given the size of the bathrooms, we can't have more, in some cases, than 1 or 2 students in a bathroom. So going back to the days of Miss Mary Lou Heighton at the high school, where she would sit in the bathroom, making sure you were doing what you were supposed to in there, we now have staff members standing outside our bathrooms, allowing our students to go in, reminding them to wash their hands, and making sure that we're not congregating in the bathrooms or having more than the number of students that we can have in there. And so that's one place that our monitors might be. Also in the classrooms. So we have a number of staff members who have medical conditions of their own, and during this time of COVID, were not going to be able to return to the classroom, whether it be surrounded by their teaching peers or surrounded by students. And so they qualified for ADA accommodations of working from home. And those accommodations were approved if and only if it was reasonable, given the situation that the school district was in. So each one of those cases was taken individually, and the principals worked through those with an HR representative assisting us, as well as myself. And right now at the high school, we have 8 of our teachers who are actually teaching students from home. So when the students are in their hybrid day of learning and they're in the classroom, we need to have someone in that classroom with them to be able to help them navigate, whether it's technology or needing to leave the classroom to go to the bathroom or to take a mask break, or whatever it may be. So we have hired those monitors for those 8 positions at the high school, and those are the teaching coverage ones. And then we have some additional folks helping us with our bathrooms. At the middle school, the same. We have some folks helping us in the hallways. As we all know, middle school students in the hallways is sort of a professional sport. So having more adults in the hallway to help remind us of what 6 feet looks like is certainly helpful, as well as the bathrooms, super important in the middle school. And we have 3 teachers that are currently teaching from home. So again, their students are logging in on their Chromebooks, and they have an adult in the room to help them navigate through that process. Coming school, we have no teachers, aside from our true remote teachers. We have no teachers that are working from home due to ADA, but we do have much smaller people who require some quite a bit more support in the hallways, and certainly as they are entering in our bathrooms. So we have support staff. And then of course, in the event that a teacher may be absent or needing class coverage to attend an IEP meeting or something of the like. And at the Gorman Fort Bank School, we have 2 staff members who, through ADA accommodations, are working from home. Same situation with the coverage. I can't thank the people enough who have stepped up and applied for that coverage. They have absolutely no idea what they were getting themselves into. It was difficult for us to tell them whether they would be covering the bathroom or working in a classroom. So thanks to all of those folks, many of whom I met for the first time today. They had been interviewed by the building principals. Just a few other updates. Recess was amazing today. So I had a number of people make comments as I was going through the community and bouncing between the schools that the Cumming School, it was great to hear the noise coming out of the playground area where kids were outside either taking mask breaks or actually participating in recess. Thankfully, the weather, I think the weatherman probably sensed my anxiety through the television that if there was a snowstorm this morning, it could have been a critical issue here in Winthrop. So thankfully we didn't have a snowstorm, no snow on the ground, and our kids were able to get outside and play a little bit this afternoon. And I think they really needed it. I think they needed to get outside and feel that sort of release of being in the fresh air, and that was super helpful to them. Let me see what else I might have. So as we move forward, I understand the concern of parents relative to how the outside numbers of COVID and the increase in the community with our COVID numbers, and we watch these numbers every day. So depending upon how you calculate the weeks, depends upon whether there's an increase or a decrease. We happen to watch the numbers every single day by age for our students, and whether or not we're in remote or whether or not we're in hybrid. That means we've had some students in, as you know, in school learning since the middle of October. That would be our high need students. And this, by middle of December, we had athletic activities going on where students were practicing and preparing for the winter season for the past 2.5 weeks. And now, as of January 4th, we have in-person learning, hybrid learning with 50%, about 80% of our students, 75% of our students to 80% of our students back in school 2 days per week in the group. So therefore, we now have a lot of people in our buildings, and we are able to look at the numbers and have to now divide them out as to whether or not students are physically in our schools in hybrid learning, or whether they're students who are remote, and begin to look at that data as we see how many students by grade level and staff members either become positive with COVID, have a positive COVID diagnosis, and whether or not they have close contacts within our school setting, and how many of those folks need to isolate or quarantine, all of which will or may directly impact either staffing or classrooms as a whole. This is an undertaking in terms of developing sort of our own dashboard of information that we can share with families that will be able to give you a broad picture of what the week looks like when we're back in in-person learning. So this is starting this school week. What does that look like for our school as a whole? So if I can give you a sample of what 1 week's worth of information would look like, how many students that are in-person learning have tested positive for COVID, how many staff members who work within the Winthrop Public Schools and are in attendance have tested positive, and of those 2 groups of people, how many people within our school community, meaning other students or teachers, have been affected by that and been identified through the nursing staff as a close contact. So it will take us at a minimum of a week to come up with our first set of data. And then the second week will give us data points to start to look at and to continue to share with the Board of Health, the school committee, and now with our families. Anyone who is a close contact in the school, whether it's a teacher or another student the parents or the guardians of the student will be contacted immediately and given direction by our staff in terms of what their students need to do. And with our staff members, the same. So anyone who is a close contact is notified immediately, and that is done personally through the nurse, followed up with a written document for them to have on hand so that they know how long they have to quarantine for. Same thing with athletics at the high school, more importantly, because right now we don't have middle school athletics going on. If there is an issue with a team, then the contact tracing is done by our staff in collaboration with the town nurse, and the determination of the close contacts is made known to us immediately by the nurse, and the families are told immediately that they were a close contact and what their need is in terms of isolating. So I will start providing that information to the school committee at our next school committee meeting. We'll have 2 bullets of data for you to have, and I'll be working with the town nurse and our COVID nursing team, which is all of our nurses and assistants, to determine how we want to present that information beyond just the school committee, whether we put a dashboard up on our website and what that dashboard may look like. And we'll be working on that this week. And I believe that is what I have for a report for the committee.
Ms. Flo.
I have about 3 questions, Lisa. The first is, I know that you sent us a full report about what DESE requires. If a student who has decided to go hybrid but doesn't return during those hybrid days. And I guess, let me just lay out what I thought we had talked about before. The first is, when we told students and parents about going back to school, hybrid or remote, we told them if they went back remote, they may or may not have a teacher. So that led so many parents to say, gee, I don't think I can handle that, because I don't want my child to not have a teacher. So several of them, I'm sure, chose remote because of that concern.
So can you just clarify that for me? Because I guess you lost me, or may not have a teacher, because I don't believe we ever said students.
You said you would be asynchronous. When we first started off in this decision about remote versus, virtual versus a hybrid, you could not guarantee that a student that was remote would have a teacher. It may be asynchronous. That was your first memorandum, because.
So if you're talking about back in July, have a teacher.
It would be asynchronous. They would be totally remote.
So you're talking prior, you're talking about the Department of Education's record.
No, I'm talking about the memo that you sent, the original memo you sent.
Can you date on that memo, please? So I can reference it, because I don't have it.
I don't have it with me, but it was,
I need the memo that I sent, because I think you're referring to the original model in which the Department of Education was helping to provide vendors if we were going to move to a model that was we were going to move to a full remote model that was going to be managed by a company versus the school. And
I thought you sent out a note, and I wish I had it with me, but I thought you sent out a note that you told parents that you would love to provide a teacher for those who remained virtual, but you couldn't guarantee that. It would depend upon the numbers.
So I don't recollect that memo, but if you can dig it up and send it to me.
Okay, I will send it to you. I will find it, because I think many parents felt that if they were not going to have a teacher, as they would if they went hybrid, that they couldn't go remote, that they would need to stay with a hybrid model. So I think let me finish this thought, and if it's not right, you please tell me and just tell everybody else. But I think that many parents feel that they definitely wanted to have their kids have a teacher. And so they decided to go hybrid. But now that they found out that that kids that were remote were also going to have a full-time teacher and that was going to be synchronous learning, that they would rather stay remote. But I understand why you said that, because you have no idea of the numbers and you can't possibly put together the format for these kids unless you have the numbers. And I got that. So I'm not blaming you about that. I'm just saying that when you say that parents who now have chosen to go hybrid, but now don't feel as if they're feeling good about sending their kids back to school because they're concerned about their safety. I'm wondering if we could not give some kind of leeway on that. So at least for the first month, I think parents will come around if they feel it's safe to go back to hybrid. Those that chose it, I think they will be feeling really good about the fact that if kids are not getting sick and you don't have a spread in the schools, that they would be more than willing to come back. But to think that they're going to be charged with being absent, or that's going to be DESE's rule, that they're going to be labeled as absent and possibly truant. I don't know what the results of that are, but I'm thinking that we should give some leeway on that, Lisa.
She interrupts.
Okay, that's one. The second, and then you can answer that, and then the second issue is.
Ms. Storm, can I ask, because I know they're compound questions, but I mean, to be
Okay,
fair to
that's
the
one.
superintendent, I think we should let her respond to at least.
Sure, absolutely.
You've already provided.
Yeah, so I'm happy, to certainly address the initial comment around a letter that was sent by me. So I'd like to see that exact letter, because it has to give me a time frame. Because for those who forget, this has been going on since
forever.
last year. So we've had multiple versions of the remote plan prior to asking parents to make a commitment. So I'll move forward with the remote plan that parents had to commit to either remote or hybrid. And you are correct. Without a commitment from parents, I had to deliver an understanding of what the floor model of a remote plan was going to be. And I delivered that to the parents in a manner that was truthful and said, this is the model that we can provide. However, depending upon the numbers, especially at the elementary level, because it's very remote model at the middle high school level is very different than a K to 5 remote model.
Right.
And so I was very clear that if in fact we could, based on the numbers, transition to having a remote teacher, that was possible, that we could do that. We also were very clear with the parents that having a remote, being fully remote may in fact result in you not having the same teacher that you have now prior to. So at no point in time did we ever say, beyond the very early renditions of a remote model when we were thinking about using the Department of Education's recommended remote instruction programs, never from that point forward did we say kids would not have a teacher from the Winthrop Public Schools. It would be more asynchronous than synchronous when we first put it out. And then, as much as it's difficult to understand, we put together a more robust model, remote model, based on the numbers that we had. So although I put the floor version model out there, we were able to then, based on the numbers, develop a model that had more synchronous capabilities based on the numbers, which is a better model because it has more direct teaching.
Absolutely.
So, and that involved identifying teachers to be able to do. And it also resulted in kids being moved out of their current classroom, many students being moved into a new teacher's classroom because we didn't get new teachers or additional teachers. We moved and used the teachers that we had on board with us to create remote-only teachers to provide a stronger program for our students. And had I told parents we were going to provide that stronger model before I knew we could do it, I would have been selling them a product that was not honest, because I didn't know that we could do that until the numbers played out. And so now here we are in the model that we have. The Department of Education was very clear that we have to offer both a hybrid model and a full remote model to our parents, which we have done both. If parents choose not to send their students to school in the hybrid model on the days their kids are supposed to be in school in the hybrid model, if a parent chooses not to send their child on that day, I can guarantee you that the school district will not kick them off of Zoom or not say to them, I'm sorry, you cannot participate. Because we all know that there are many parents that are concerned about the numbers in the community, which is another moving part of this entire situation that I have zero control over. Parents' fears and the height of the numbers in the community, or how parents are going to feel this week versus last week or in next week. What I can't do is tell parents I can't lie to parents and say the remote model of you choosing to not send your children to school and access remote learning is equivalent to the remote model we have in place, because it's not. The remote model that we built is different than the choice of parents deciding that they're just not going to send their kids to school. So I called the Department of Ed and said, I have concerned parents. We can't change their model because it completely disrupts the entire model that we've already set for our kids. I would have to move multiple kids around again and move multiple teachers around again. And it's not feasible to do so. We set a date and we're sticking with that date for that reason. What do I do with the parents that just don't send their kids to school? I'm not going to disconnect them from Zoom and tell them they can't learn. What do I do with them? Do I allow that to continue? And the Department of Education was very clear, although I don't agree, and I'll say it again, although I don't agree that we have to mark kids absent when in fact they are accessing learning. The Department of Education told me, albeit they're accessing learning, if they are in a hybrid model and they don't show up to in-person learning, you have to mark them as absent. You do not have to cut them off, but you have to mark them absent from the model that you have on record with the Department of Education.
What does that mean, Lisa?
The reason I don't agree with marking them absent is because one, they're there, and two, the number of times a student is absent directly affects our accountability in terms of the rating of the public school. And I was told that absolutely that is the case, and the Department of Education understands why we're annoyed about it. However, if a student is absent on a day that they're supposed to be in school, the school department cannot say they are there. If they're in a fully remote model, they set the guidelines. Laurie, I don't know if you want to, if I'm not being clear about it, but you certainly can jump in and talk about the department's, decision-making that we have to proceed.
Yeah, so, I mean, with the accountability ratings, like Superintendent Howard said, this plays a large role. And I know that the Department of Education is looking at everything this year and taking everything into consideration. And we may get all kinds of guidance about changes in that as the year goes on, but we just don't know that at this time. But they are very specific about it. And I think it is a lot due to the data that they are tracking. So our iPass system that it feeds information to the Department of Education every 15 minutes. So all the work that had to be done in changing students, for example, from classroom to classroom and teacher to teacher, we couldn't just move them to a teacher by ourselves. Like, we had to withdraw them, much like at a high school level, even at the elementaries, and then re-enroll them. Otherwise, we would have lost all of their first trimester's information and grading. So it's a much bigger process, and it had to be done during this week when there was no live reporting going on to the state. So the state's watching all of their data really very precisely, and they're also collecting part of that student learning time that Superintendent Howard addressed last time. Is they're collecting how many students across the state are in all these different models at any given time, and which ones are in red district and yellow. So it's all part of their data. So that's why they're being kind of hard-nosed with us as far as nobody's coming out to get us. And as Superintendent Howard said, she doesn't agree. We don't agree that kids shouldn't be able to access it. They should. And so therefore in Winthrop, they will. But we still are required to mark them absent. But anything as far as truancy that you mentioned, Mrs. Swope, that would come through the schools. So Mrs. Superintendent Howard has already instructed principals and to let teachers know that any child who isn't reporting but is engaging needs to be kept track of on a separate level. So
We are not going to be reporting students to the Department of Children and Families that are not that are not coming to in-person learning based on conversations we've had with their parents, that they are fearful of the numbers in the community. We will not be reporting those students to the Department of Children and Families as truant. I mean, that would be silly. We all very silly to want children who want to access learning, who don't make the rules in their house, off of Zoom during a day that the parent has decided the child will not be attending in-person learning. And the time on learning, so when parents are asking me, why can't you just mark them present? Because the Department of Education says all students who are remote need to meet 35 hours of synchronous learning. And synchronous learning can be either live teaching or synchronous lesson. So there are way more parameters that are put upon us that we can't wiggle out of. There are certain things that we can. Not allowing kids to access learning just because they're supposed to be in school was not an option for us at all. But we don't have control over how the Department of Education says we have to code kids in terms of their attendance. What I can say is it is most impactful at the elementary level because of the model in K-5. And I'm not so sure, and I'm not being sarcastic, I'm actually being realistic. I'm not so sure that having an absentee record reflected on your third grade transcript is going to be detrimental moving forward when it's being done during a pandemic. So parents are upset that they think that their child's going to be marked as absent and not really counted. It's a data keeping activity for the state of Massachusetts, for the Department.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure they weren't truant, because that would be, I think, terrible. And I do understand that really parents did choose this. I mean, I will have to get the data for you, but I do recall that many parents thought that the reason that they wanted their kids did not want their kids to stay remote is because they thought that there would be much more asynchronous learning.
Oh, I agree with that. That is very factual that I told them that, because in the moment when I was asking parents to make a commitment, I had to give them the model that I could be assured I could deliver.
Right,
and when
I got it.
Parents chose to stay remote, it enabled us to make changes. Without that information and that commitment, I could not make any of those changes with my staff.
I got the catch-22. I'm just saying that that's where, and when I said no teacher, I meant asynchronous learning. So then, Mr. Chairman, can I have one more question and I'll skip my second?
Absolutely.
All right. My other question is, Lisa, is there any kind of bottom line number that we would have that if indeed we pass that mark in terms of COVID in the schools, that we would shut them down and go back to remote for a couple of weeks?
Yeah, so the easy answer to that is that there's not an actual number that anyone has put out there or come up with. I would say from my discussions with the nursing staff and the town health nurse, as of this point, with our nursing staff that we have, as students or staff members present as either symptomatic or produce a positive COVID diagnosis in which we have to do the tracking, we feel strongly that right now, in the moment today, we're able to handle what's before us. If the number of students and staff members with COVID or presenting with COVID symptoms, in which our nursing staff and other identified staff members in the building have to support those people and do the contact tracing. if that amount outpaces our ability to do our job quickly and efficiently, which is what is required to keep in-school spreading down, then we will immediately be alerting the school committee and the Board of Health that we are being outpaced. And at that point, I believe you will see, evidence of an in-school spread, perhaps. But I think prior to getting to the point where it impacts in-school spreading, our nurses will let us know that they cannot keep up with what's happening with our students. We're not there in the moment. We've been back for 1 day. However, the 3 weeks that we've had, 2.5 weeks that we've had athletics, we have had one case in which there was a COVID positive case, and our nurses were able to react quickly, do the contact tracing quickly, and we have seen no evidence of additional spread. We also had a case at the Gorman Fort Bank School in which a staff member tested positive, asymptomatic, had service students, and we had to remove 16 close contacts of students within that building. And since that moment, there has been no evidence of contact spreading, meaning of those 16 people that were removed, there has been no positive cases from that. And typically that's attributed to fast action and being able to not only isolate folks, remove a positive person, isolate anyone who was a close contact who could potentially transmit COVID if they too get it, and then also do the cleaning associated with reacting to a positive case or a presumptive positive case in your building. If we get to a point where we feel that the cases that we're seeing outpace our ability to do that efficiently, the school nurses and principals will be the first ones to tell us. That could happen building by building, or it could happen as a district, as a school district. And we will come right to the school committee and the Board of Health with that information, as it
I guess the reason I was asking is that Marshfield just closed down because they had 32 new cases among students and staff since December 25th. And then Lexington has decided that if they have 20 cases within 100,000, that they will, if that incidence hits that, they will shut down. I'm just wondering, I just didn't know if we had a moment.
Are those decisions that are being made by the school department, or out of curiosity, or is it by the Board of Health? So was it?
I believe it was, well, in Marshfield, I mean, I think it's a town. I mean, the Board of, I'm not sure if just the school committee decides that kind of thing, but that's why I was wondering if we had any kind of data parameters that said, yes, I mean, we definitely would need to shut down for a couple of weeks to clean and to reassess. So,
well, I've seen it done in both ways. So immediately, automatically, if there is a need to shut a school down because there has been a case and you have to clean the whole school, the superintendent has the authority to do that in the moment.
Right.
In terms of having protocols or a set of numbers in place, I've seen it both ways. I've seen a school committee develop those numbers, and I've also seen a Board of Health develop those numbers. I've also seen many school systems who don't have those numbers and are living week to week and day to day based on what's happening in their actual school community and keeping it to what they can handle within their school. So it's sort of all over the map from what I have looked at and from other superintendents I've spoken with.
I just don't know what we're going to do. I'd be interested. So if you have some ideas as it goes forward, let me know. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Does anyone have any further questions or comments for Ms. Howard?
Yes, I have a very quick question, and it could be something that I've missed in the correspondence, but I was curious as to how we were going to handle the hybrid model for Monday holidays. Might be a silly question, but
yeah. So if there's a Monday holiday, it's, we counted the holidays, I believe, and Laurie helped me because it's been, I've counted so many times, but I believe we counted the Monday holidays and offset them to the Thursday, Friday, either professional development days or half days. Am I right with that, or am I dreaming and making that up?
Yeah, we went through and looked at it. Unfortunately, I mean, when we started doing it originally, it was planning to go back to hybrid at an earlier time. So we were including like the Thanksgiving break that would involve a Thursday and Friday, the winter holiday that would involve Thursdays and Fridays. So, I mean, it's definitely something that we probably could and should look at again. And, you know, we could figure out or look at if it looks like too many are going to be offset, maybe we can do something with our Wednesdays on those weeks, but we'd have to probably look at it by building to see what would work, because there's so much different going on at each level. And because of not just our regular ed, but our high needs population and the days that they attend. But good point, because something we could probably just look at again and make sure is still fairly in line. And if not, make some adjustments.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Galvin.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, we're going on to the homeschool applications. Ms. Galvin, do we have any new unapproved homeschool applications that need to be approved this evening?
We do not. We're up to date.
Excellent. Personnel, Ms. Howard, can you bring us up to speed on the personnel issues, appointments, resignations, retirements, postings, or leaves of absence?
Sure. For appointments, we have hired Miss Taylor St. Jean as an ESP at the William P. Gorman School. Resignations, thankfully, we have none at this time. So I hope you're all sitting, because I am going to tell you of a retirement, and that retirement is not mine. So don't get too excited, but it's Nora Grimes. So I'd like to read Nora's letter, if you don't mind. Pretending like this is not happening. So I'm going to be reading it without emotion, because it's not real as of right now to me. Dear Superintendent Howard and School Committee, I am writing to announce my intention to retire on June 30th, 2021. I feel compelled to tell you that this decision was made last year before the pandemic and subsequent school closures. And I can attest to that, because we had a confidential conversation. My family and I agreed that 33 years in education is a lengthy career, and the time has come to move on. I would like to add that 33 years ago, I was a graduate of BU, which I have not held against her as a BC grad, who moved to Boston from Syracuse, New York, to attend graduate school at BU. Upon graduation, my advisor contacted me about a job opening in the Winthrop Public Schools. How fortunate I was to be in the right place at the right time to land the job, and not only spend my career with the Winthrop Public Schools, but also call Winthrop my home. Words cannot express how truly fortunate I feel, having worked with some of the best students, families, educators, administrators, and school committee members over the past 3 decades. It has been my honor and my privilege. Thank you, Nora Grimes. So that might be the most difficult retirement letter that I've read in a while. But what I can tell you is I'm thrilled for Nora. And I'm thrilled for Nora for a whole host of reasons, including the fact that she has 2 amazing daughters that she will be able to now dedicate her time to. She has dedicated more time than most people would ever dedicate to the public school, much of which has been done in the last several months, which none of us anticipated. For her to not tap out prior to that, when she could, is a true testament to how Nora does things. Nora finishes the game, and she's going to finish this game, and she's not going to be too far away. I know where she lives, unfortunately for her, and we will rely on Nora to help transition us into the next phase. So she's done an amazing job of taking care of the coming school and all of the staff and students that are in that building. And I have no doubt that she will be missed when she moves on to her next step in life. So I'm excited for her. I didn't really want to read that. I asked her today if we could wait. She said no. I thought she'd change her mind. She didn't. So thanks, Nora, for being you, basically. So moving on from that, postings, I'm going to let that settle in a little bit before we post that job. I have some crossing guards posted. We're doing our best to protect our students. We do have some students that are walking, so we'd like to continue to fill those positions that we haven't had to fill for a while. We have a few ESP openings at the middle school. We have a temporary custodial, junior custodial position where, as we're learning, going through this process, where we need to fill gaps to make sure our students remain safe. And in terms of nursing, there is not on this agenda, there will be on the next agenda, you will see a posting for nursing. We want to make sure that we are able to keep our kids in school. And in that realm, I feel strongly, as do our nurses, that we need additional nursing services to help us contact trace in a manner that is efficient and supportive of the time. I have no leaves of absence to report to you.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. Ms. Swope.
Just a note, Nora Grimes is a fantastic principal. We will miss her terribly. She's terrific. Please pass that on.
Very big loss to the district, very big loss. Okay, moving on to new business, in-person school committee meetings.
Chairman.
Mr. Matucci.
Yeah. Thanks. Before I get into that, I just want to thank Lisa for today and the staff. Great job. I had all the confidence in the world they could pull it off, but it's not easy and it's a lot of work, and I thank them. I do feel strongly, though, about where we now have voted for the regular ed kids to get back, and they're back, that we should be meeting in person sooner than later. I do know there are some logistic issues as far as, where we're going to meet 6 feet apart and whatever protocols that we want to put in play. And also, I'm aware of the WCAT issue as far as them sending people in. So I'd like to see if we can get started on that. And I would like to make a motion that we start meeting in person, the first meeting in February.
Second.
Okay, seconded. For discussion, go ahead, Mr. Capabianco.
I support the motion fully, but may I suggest we edit the language so if someone's high risk or families at risk, they have the option to attend the meeting remotely.
Okay, before you put that motion in play, can I ask you to suspend that just for a moment? I'd also like to add to that amendment, if you'll agree, that we ask the superintendent to come up with the protocols and come up with a location that we can actually do this within the bounds of the social distancing requirements. And then
I think those are the motion.
That's already in your motion, Mr. Matucci?
Yes.
Okay. So your motion is to allow people to attend remotely that are at high risk. Is that correct, Mr. Capabianco?
Yeah. Well, that was Tino's.
Yes.
No, I think we should. I believe we should meet in person because that's the expectation that we set for our students and staff. However, I think if someone is at high risk, they should have the option to have the meeting remotely. Very similar to my position earlier in the year, I felt our teachers should have the opportunity to teach remotely. So I just want to be consistent.
Thank you, Mr. Capabianco. So the motion that's before us is that we schedule our next live committee meeting for the first meeting in February, provided that Superintendent Howard can report back to us that she has coordinated with WCAT, address the protocols, and find a location that allows whatever members that can attend live be able to be within the social distancing guidelines of the state. Does everyone understand that motion? Mr.
Yes.
Bunker?
Yeah, I just want to be heard for a moment on it because the council is going through the same thing. There was a motion tomorrow night about the council meeting at large. And I would hope that the council and the school committee would get together and do the same thing, whichever it is. The situation with the council meeting at large, the town manager has been working on possibilities and sites where we could do that. What he's come up with is that the most we could do in the hobby room is have 4 people attend and keep in the governor's protocol and guidelines. We felt that maybe in the senior center we could do a couple more. but there would always have to be the possibility that some of the people would not be present and would be attending by Zoom, and some would be present. That's the way the council is starting to look at it now. I think that we should put it, up to Lisa to work with Austin Faison, our town manager, so that we're following the same protocols in the school committee as we're following in the town council. And, it may take more than the first meeting in February to have that done and have it done, sufficiently. So I would be against the motion as it stands now, but I would be in favor of the motion directing our superintendent to work with the town manager on a plan for in-person, partially in-person and partially remote meetings in the future.
Perhaps we could amend the motion so that it would encompass that and set the goal for at the latest, the second meeting in February. By then, we should have had some protocols worked out. We also have the luxury of having gymnasiums where we have the open space that might help the town as well.
Yeah, we do, provided that we have the technical support in the gymnasiums that would go with a meeting. And even if we have gymnasiums and we have a large space, I don't know if we're going to be able to open it fully to the public, or what percentage of the public could come in for public comments. So I think all that has to be really investigated before we just make a motion that date we're going to do it.
So I would ask if someone would amend their motion or add an amendment that we set a goal of the second week or second meeting of February, provided that those logistics are back, but that we do report back at our coming meetings so that we know where we're at. I can tell you that I've spoken to Michael Cabral today in anticipation of this meeting to see what his thoughts were on having it filmed live, and also the technical issues of having Zoom, hybrid Zoom and hybrid live, because you'd have people all having to be with their screens open and the reverberation back to us. We're all in the same room. We'll be getting the audio over and over. So I think there's a few things to work out. I'd like to set a goal so that we can have some updates if that's amenable to people, so that we have a date that we're shooting for. And if we can't make it to that date because those protocols and the agreement or the discussions with the town can't be reached, that we report back in the next meeting or two to be sure that we know where we're at.
Chairman? Yeah, I still think that we need to put a time on this. I don't like to see things just hanging out there like we seem to do, and things don't get done in a timely fashion, I feel. So I would like to stick with the original motion that it's going to be the first meeting in February. Now, obviously, if things don't work out and that can't be done, we certainly are not going to meet in person. But I would like to see that happen, if it can be, in the first meeting in February.
Ms. Howard, do you think that will give you sufficient time to investigate the use of potentially the gyms or other locations, as well as working with CAT and town manager?
I think so. I mean, some of the things that sort of pop up into my mind, just so I'm sure what I'm investigating and what I'm planning for, is if this is the school meetings as well as town council meetings or other meetings, what comes into my mind is the use of the gym. As you know, we're gym thin in Winthrop, so the high school gym during winter season is used just about every single night from 3 o'clock on, whether it's boys practice, well, varsity JV, girls varsity JV, or other sports that are in there. So I certainly will look into that in terms of capabilities for streaming. The athletic director and myself have been working over the past 2 weeks with Mr. Donnelly to land an ability to live stream, because we have some heavy duty restrictions through MIAA on capacity in the gym for away teams and our own teams. the present time, I believe we're only allowed to have 2 parents per student or 2 adults per student present in the gym. And that's only for the home team. The away team is not able to bring people to the gym or to the field if it's an enclosed space. So I believe we'll have live streaming up and running by next week. That is our plan. Just similar to if you're watching your kids' hockey game and they play for Holy Cross and you're home on your couch and you can live stream into the barn to watch your college age kid playing hockey. That's the capabilities we're looking at for our student athletes so that their families can watch from home if they can't get into the gym. That would be very helpful in terms of meetings. So I'll investigate the space with the understanding of, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that this is something we want to use both for the town and the school side, although the calendar might not meet. You're really looking at what are the capabilities, what's the size, the capacity, and the ability to do that from a technological standpoint too. Does that sound right?
That is correct.
Sounds pretty right.
Yeah, so I certainly can investigate that, and if I get hung up on any of it, and I can give you an update at the next meeting for sure, but I can continue to communicate with the town manager as well.
Mr. Capabianca, your amendment to that was to allow those that cannot attend live to call in or be part of a Zoom or whatever technology that we feel appropriate.
Yes, and I know that's being done in other towns. That's going on right now with the Everett School Committee. And I have a friend that's a member of the Everett City Council, and her mother is at risk, and she is participating remotely.
I believe that's part of the governor's order as it stands. Is that correct, President Boncory?
Yes.
So
I think.
I don't think we need to have an amendment where it's already there. Although for informational purposes, I think it's good. So would you like to withdraw your motion, Mr. Capabianco? It is part of the governor's order to allow for.
Sure, I withdraw my motion.
Okay, so the motion that's before us is that we set our next live meeting date to the first meeting of February, provided that protocols and location can be found that accommodate appropriate social distancing and discussion with the town's town manager to bridge the way that both the town and the school department will be handling live meetings going forward to ensure that we are all in accordance with the law.
Chairman,
Mr. Martucci?
I'm still not sure why do we have to coordinate with the town manager? What does he get to do with this?
Because Mr. Boncory asked that we try to get a across the board discussion. It doesn't mean that we can't go forward without it. However, it would be nice that the superintendent would be allowed to speak with the town manager to make sure that our protocols are their protocols.
And then we could possibly both end up having the same place to have our meetings if it fits protocol wise.
Okay.
Is that accurate as to our motion? Does everyone understand the motion? Is there any further discussion? Ms. Powell?
Yeah, I have some concerns about this. I agree that it would be great to be meeting in person, and I understand that we want to set a precedent or set the example because we were asking our teachers and students to be live, but I am concerned about the logistics of it. I'm concerned about having us all sitting 6 feet apart, not being able to hear each other, and the public not being able to understand us because we're all wearing masks. And I'm also concerned about the public, asking the public to participate and come to our meetings to be able to be a part of it. Whereas with the Zoom, they now can from the safety of their home. So I feel I'm not in favor of this at this point in time because I just don't feel that we are going to be able to be as inclusive as we have been.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Patty, can you call the roll, please?
Ms. Barry? Mr. Boncory?
No.
Mr. Capabianco?
Yes.
Mr. Martucci?
Yes.
Ms. Swope?
No.
Ms. Powell?
No.
Mr. Perrin?
I'm going to say yes to move forward. Okay, any unfinished business? I see none. Public relations? President Boncour, do you have anything this evening?
Just please tune in tomorrow night to the town council meeting. We'll be delivering a state of the town for the year 2020 and a little bit of prediction as to what we're going to be doing going forward for 2021. In the meantime, please stay safe. Our numbers are a little bit better after this Christmas vacation than they were after the Thanksgiving vacation. And hopefully we're going to go forward and numbers are going to get less and less once we get these vaccines started.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. President Boncour. Ms. Swope, do you have anything for public relations?
No, I ditto his.
Thank you. Ms. Barry, do you have any public relations this evening? Thank you. Mr. Capabianco, do you have anything this evening?
I just want to thank Speaker DeLeo for his many years of service and all he's done for the town of Winthrop and the Winthrop School Department. And I also wanted to congratulate our students, teachers, staffs, and colleagues that we made it through 2020. So the future looks bright.
Thank you, Mr. Capabianco. Mr. Matucci, do you have anything this evening?
Just I'm very, very happy that the students are back in school. And I'm happy that we're going to shoot for February 1st to meet in person. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Matucci. Ms. Powell?
Nothing tonight. Thank you.
Okay, for myself, I just want to thank the faculty and staff of the schools. I know it's been a difficult ride during an unprecedented pandemic, but I want to thank them for their commitment and for their hard work to get us to where we are today. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Matucci, seconded by Ms. Powell. Can we have a roll call vote, please, Patty, for the record?
Yes, Miss Barry?
Yes.
Mr. Boncour?
Yes.
Mr. Capabianco?
Yes.
Mr. Matucci?
Yes.
Ms. Swope?
Yes.
Ms. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Perrin?
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Good night.
Yes.